Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. You all know me, Joseph Carroll, but this is the best cover artist on the planet, in my humble opinion, Matthew Allen Bond.
It,
Um, now, as a lot of people know, I hype you up on my channel all the time. All the time. You are my cover artist, but you do the gamut of things I've seen. I've seen some of your work for comics, and we were talking behind the scenes here about doing art for people's swords. Maybe we can get into that here shortly, but I actually just wanted to kind of start off with when did you really because we all, when we're little kids, we're all drawing with, colored pencils and stuff like that. When did you really fall in love with art and want to do it all the time?
yeah, that's a great question. So when I was 3 years old, my father got me a couple of comic books, and I was completely enamored with the artwork. And it really just, I started trying to copy the art in the comics I saw. I really wanted to produce that kind of, those kinds of quality drawings. And, as a young child, you just don't have the skill set. But I just, it kind of, something in my brain just told me I've got to get better at this. And when I went to classes at school, in elementary school, I seemed to have a knack for just depicting my visions onto paper, as best the kid could do. And my peers took notice of that, and I became that, I was the art guy. I was the kid that could make art. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. I got praise from teachers, and, I kept pushing at it. It wasn't a constant thing. I was drawing on and off for a long time. And that took a brief hiatus, which I shouldn't have done, but I did. But so I'd say as early as 3 or 4, when I really just like art, I knew that art was something I could get better at. I had kind of a talent or a knack for it. I never let it go. And that's one thing I'm glad I never did. But yeah, so as early as 3, 4.
So who was the one that was kind of really pushing you to keep going or hone your craft? Was it your parents? Was it a teacher?
Yeah, my parents were, definitely supportive, but I have to say my teachers throughout school were absolutely, 100% for it. They just really, I had teachers, for instance, in grade 6, the one teacher, she would let me conduct, because she'd have like an art lesson, I guess, every week or 2 weeks. And she'd let me conduct lessons for the class at age 10 or 11. So,
Wow.
because I was studying art techniques on my own time, of course. And she saw in my art that I produced just for fun. She's like, "Oh, I like that. Can you show the class how to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can totally do that." And that was actually stuff that I was learning from the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which is ask any artist and they'll tell you that book is a golden classic. It's a timeless book for teaching basic drawing skill, but it's anybody can refer back to it at any skill level. But yeah, I was learning perspective from that and applying it. And yeah, so I have to really say, honestly, my teachers throughout elementary school just really, I'll never forget them. They drove it home.
So did you were you big into reading comics as well, or was it just like the art aspect of it really?
Oh, I read tons of them. I still read comics today, but mostly it's for it is for the art. I follow my favorite artists, so I support their work, of course. I have my favorite writers as well. But for me, comics, obviously, they're more of a visual medium, and they've always been that way for me personally. I follow my favorite artists more so than the writers, just because whatever work they're doing, that's where I get inspiration from. So the art, big time. I did read a lot of my. I have at least maybe 1,000 in my collection, so I can't say I'm just a casual fan. I still enjoy the medium, the storytelling component.
So, and this is one thing I've noticed, and I mean, this is how we kind of, hooked up. Was we were following each other just kind of through the writing community and art community and stuff. And I was like, does anybody do high quality pencil art or ink art? And you were just kind of popped up. You're like, check out my stuff.
Yeah.
And so I went to your website, it was Drawn by Bond.
That's right.
And I was like, man, this is exactly what I was looking for, because I thought when I was looking at covers, I was like, well, what do what do I like? And nobody's a complete individual, right? There are other people who share the same interests. So I was like, well, if I like it, I know there's going to be tons and tons of people who like it too. And I think the black and white really pops off the pages, or if you're scrolling down and you're seeing all these kind of, super glossy, high, color things, and then you see this black and white thing, you're like, oh, stop for a second, and the detail in it makes you keep looking. And so I was just like, yeah, man, I got to check that out. And the more I have got into reading and comics and stuff, were you influenced by like manga and stuff like that as well? Because it looks, a lot of the stuff kind of almost berserkish.
That's the word, man. That's you nailed it right there. Yeah, I grew up reading actually. So a lot of Marvel stuff, of course. That's kind of what a lot of younger people start off reading, the big two, DC, Marvel comics. But then my taste kind of shifted around age 12, 13. I was really into the kind of independent comic creators. Anything published by Fantagraphics, it's all black and white. And then I discovered Berserk when I was in high school. A friend of mine in grade 11, so it was kind of late to that game. But he told me about Berserk, and I'm like, what is that? And I went to the bookstore and took a look, and the rest is history, because I've been a fan of Berserk from I have all the latest collected volumes. I've got them all, because it's, in my opinion, one of the best stories ever written and drawn. Kentaro Miura is an amazing artist, and absolutely influenced a lot of that, like the detail work, like just pushing it further as far as you can go with as much clarity as possible. That's something I really took away from his work.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been super late to the game with Berserk. I mean, I've heard about it for years, but I really never got into it. But my friend he's hardcore into that. So he made me watch all the movies, and it was showing me, the things. I was like, yeah, I could definitely see the similarities. Also, like, were you into like Spawn and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of your like your Demon Slayer stuff, and I'm like, that is pretty sweet.
It's cool. It's really cool how you've been able to like pinpoint precisely what my interests have been, because Spawn was, I'd say, with Marvel it was Spider-Man, with DC it was Batman, and with Image it was Spawn. Those were my top three favorite characters growing up. And yeah, Spawn, especially Spawn, because of Greg Capullo's artwork. Todd McFarlane had the similar style, which, I like his work, but Greg Capullo just took it home to me. He was on the comic for about 50 or 60 issues, and just that artwork is, to me, it's the epitome of comic book artwork. It's just so explosive, so detailed, so dynamic, and he'll always be a heavy influence on my own work. So yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, so like, and I know with Spawn that they kind of broke the mold with certain things that you were allowed to do, where they cross the images across different pages, and they're like, you can't do that. Like, yeah.
Oh, this like I remember sorry to cut in one example. There was a camera shot in one of the issues where the characters are having a discussion at a diner and a table, and the camera is inside the character's mouth looking out as he's chewing food. And you see the other character through his mouth, and they're talking. It's just like, when you see angles like that, you can't even do that in a movie. Like, you'd have to use CGI to do that. So with comics, there is no limit. And that's always what has just inspired my own imagination.
Yeah, that is super cool. Now, I know, I don't know if it was last year, but you got a commission for a pretty big comic. I remember you were doing, I forget what it was called. It had like a needle on the front of it or something.
That was actually so I'm working with my collaborator, and I we're doing separate side projects. He's a novelist, Gary S. Cadet, excellent novelist. He's been published 10 times in the last 2 years, and his work is, so he's been traditionally publishing his work, and often it's the case that he'll need a cover drawn. So I'll sneak in a cover for him. And that book is called Viral Load. So it wasn't a comic, but it is a cover for one of his novels. So that was published last year.
Yeah, that was very like a surreal type. But again, showing off your detail work on that. I thought that was so cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, there's raining capsules and pills down the page. That every single one was hand drawn, and it's a process. But I love getting into it like that. It's fun.
Yeah, that is so cool. So who would you say, like, I know we've kind of talked about some different comics. Who's like your go-to like influence when you're like, all right, I'm trying to get an influence here, get motivated? Who do you look at?
I'm going to go back to, I'm going to say definitely Greg Capullo, Kentaro Miura from Berserk, Paul Chadwick, who drew the Concrete series. It's kind of a lesser known series, but absolutely phenomenal work. He takes a more representational approach to creating his comics. I'd say they're actually like literary pieces of work because it's very strong storytelling, and it's a fantastical idea, but it's grounded very heavily in reality, and it really spoke to me. And that's something else I read when I was a teenager. So his work it kind of grounds me, because all the other work is very it's like super dynamic fantasy based content, but Chadwick's work is definitely something to reel me in a little bit and get me focused on just like the highest quality work I can produce.
And now recently you've been teaching people. Has that helped your actual ability? Because I know a lot of times as you teach, you get better yourself, because again, you're trying to teach them the basics, and now you're making your own basics better.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, so in the last 8 months, I've been teaching private art lessons, one-on-one, live sessions, and one of the best students I've got, he has really grown from watching me demonstrate technique in front of him. I've seen his work just explode. He's 11 years old, and he's just killing it with his skill development. And yes, in terms of me getting better, absolutely. He'll ask me questions that have me thinking. The thing about art is being able to see, and not just seeing what's in front of you and trying to replicate it on a page, but seeing it in your mind, putting it down, but also seeing your own work and the ways in which it can get better. Once you have that skill down, you're really starting to grow as an artist. And I see him developing that ability at such a young age. So, and he's getting me to even see my own work. He's calling out things in my work, and I'm like, you're right. I mean, we can improve anatomy here. We can be a little more dynamic there. He's like, why did you do this? Kids ask a lot of why questions, like, how come this, why that? And I'm like, these are great questions, because I go back and I'm thinking, as I'm building my curriculum for online content, he's absolutely a key aspect in helping me, push my own work further. So,
yeah, that is so good. I love teaching. I'm actually a coach for my son's football team. And
very nice. Cool.
Nice. And just, you start, again, like I said, you start thinking about your own basics when you're, teaching little kids, because they do ask, well, why would you do it this way and not this way? And then you're like, well, maybe you could do it that way, because their minds are open. Their minds are just, they don't see limitations.
That's exactly right. Yeah, precisely. Like there's nothing. It's so fascinating to watch him develop his skill, because there are no limitations. Nothing is hindering him from just trying new things. There's no fear. There's no hindrance from anything, really. And I try to emphasize that too. I say, like, just explore. If it doesn't look right, erase. There's no shame in erasing a million times. Just push forwards.
So, and I guess that's a good question. Like, how do you feel when you're getting in and erasing stuff? Is it like, do you get super, like, I know I'm a heavy person. When I have to erase a large section, I kind of get frustrated. Do you get frustrated, or are you like, this is just a part of the process?
So that's something else that's kind of interesting to think about, because every piece that I've produced for you, I've started with a rough pencil piece, like just a rough draft. And in that rough stage, I try to, so we could say for the last cover I produced for you, that was about 2 to 3 hours of rough for the front cover, just pencil work, rough pencil work, getting the idea down. And I try not to go overboard if I know I'm gonna ink the piece, because a lot of the creativity comes out in the ink. The pencil is more like a framework. It's more like they are construction lines. Some pieces I do kind of finalize in pencil, in graphite, just because I don't really want to go back and ink it, but with professional work, it's all got to be inked. So I'll put down as much pencil work as necessary, but never in excess, because I let the ink do that. And I've seen some professionals where, like guys that I look up to still, they'll slap down like a stick figure in a pose, and it's like that's enough for them to act as a field guide to just throw the ink down. It's like, wow, that is remarkable. I'm not there yet. I'd say maybe another few years I'd be confident enough to not even use pencil. I mean, I could probably go straight to ink, but that's down the road. That'll be the end game.
That kind of sounds like in the writing world, a heavy plotter versus a pantser. You know, it's
True,
like,
yeah, right.
you know, it's just like the way I do it, I'm a little bit in between. Like whenever I'm writing my novels, my full length novels, I just do bullet points.
Okay.
You know, I have like 10, 12 bullet points. I'm like, all right, this is the character. They need to go here, meet this person, go here, save whatever, you know,
Nice.
and then I just kind of come up with it in my head to link each of the things. And that kind of sounds like, you know, put down is how much, you know, pencil you need is the plotting, and then the rest is just kind of working in.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's exactly. It's like it's kind of like a skeletal framework, which it's kind of like, yeah, it cushions the. It's not. It's hard to explain, but it's a framework. It's a framework to work within, and of course push beyond, which is always what happens when the ink comes down. Because I show a lot of pencil work that I do, like practice sketches.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, they're only halfway finished before the ink job, because the ink is just gonna take it the full mile. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I like, you'll send me. You're like, all right, this is the end of the pencil art, and I'm like, that looks great. But then when you start hitting the ink, it just everything explodes.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, you know, it goes from the really impressed to holy God. You know?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and then like, all right, see if we can pull this up here. See if we can make it.
Nice. That's looking sharp.
Yeah. So this
Nice
is,
print.
you know, this is the first one, More Than a Vampire. How did now? I only gave you a couple of things. I gave you the hand, sword, and a cut, and then you just came up with everything else, the border and everything. How does that come to your mind?
Great question. So I always like framing my work to some capacity. Even my basic pencil sketches have a frame around them, like character designs and that, just to keep the image contained and act as a kind of. And often the times the character will be extended beyond the frame, so like it's adding that field of depth, the illusion of depth, and a little bit of that takes place on that cover. But so an ornate frame to help emphasize what's on the interior. Because like you just look at a painting, every nice painting has a frame around it if it's on a wall, because it helps the focal put emphasis on what's centered within the frame. And then of course the title, your name, those two aspects are hugely important for just from a marketing angle.
Oh yeah,
you want people to see your name. That's critical. That had to be large, and of course the title of the book had to be clear and bold. And then I actually. Doing all your covers, I always start with everything around the central image, because then, and I find it like I inked everything around the central image before I did the central image, because I would gauge how heavy the detail was around it, and then just like pound it in or reel it back to finish it off. So it's like I had to go about this very carefully and a lot of steps and thinking critically before doing anything. So.
Yeah, I've also had another thing that people really seem to like about it is the font. They're just like, the font on that is like other words. They're like, is that a font that he just created, or did he? Because they're like, we would love to have that style of font, and I'm just like, I was like, I assume that he just kind of draws it off the top of the head.
It is completely created from my imagination. The one thing I will say, the font on the back cover of book 2, I referenced loosely a kind of like Western themed kind of font. Yeah. Exactly. But I didn't copy it verbatim. I never copy anything. It's always I'll reference and then loosely base off the reference. But if you look carefully, every single letter of the same type is a little bit different. Yeah. Because I'm not stamping anything. I drew every letter. So, and I think it really adds some effect, and it draws attention, and that's the purpose of art, is to draw attention.
Yeah, people really liked the kind of the bursting, and it, like you said, it draws them to the center and into the gun and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm gonna see if we can pull this up here and make this happen, and I can reveal the newest cover here. Let's see if we can make this work here. All right.
Yep.
All right. So that looks pretty good. But again, we'll I know Matthew's going to put it out, and I'll put it out, and we'll get it in the super HD version later. But the detail on it, even here, you can see the detail is so much better. And that axe handle, like I've shown a couple people, my friends and close writers and stuff, and they are just blown away by the detail work. And the ropes look real. Like
the ropes on the back cover, or right here on the front of the handle.
Yeah, right. Well, both. And I don't have the image to pull up, but I will put it out there later. On the back end, you've made like a leather, like they're tanning hides.
Yeah,
exactly. That is, from your mind, I didn't tell you to do any of that.
No.
And I'm just like, how do you think of these things? Is this just like, are you thinking the time frame, or how do you come up with that?
So yeah, I specified with you the era in which this book would take place. So you said it was kind of a native theme, and I'm like, we got to go with every native element possible. So on the front cover, you've got feathers, you've got dream catchers, arrows, the stone axe, a couple of runes that I actually researched. Those runes, they're all legitimate. They're all native, authentic runes.
Nice.
And they all have specific meaning. I went that crazy with it. I looked up the meanings of each of them, and if you do look them up, you'll find how relevant they are to your actual work. So that was fun to do. I just like making the work authentic and meaningful is my purpose. Always have to have like meaning and significance. Nothing is without thought. And on the back, I thought, well, why not push with the animal skin being cured in the sun? So that was good practice for me too. Because if you look carefully at all the rope, everything works. Like it's actually, if it was actually hung up, it would look like that.
Yeah, so. Yeah. That was the first thing, and then I always like to have. I mean, and we've talked about this, having just a splash of color to kind of draw the eye. And I know you were like, I'm hoping you want this symbol to be where the thing comes from. He goes, because I made that customized perfectly. Right. And I was like, yes, like we're on the same page here.
Yep. And if you apply the rule of thirds, which is a technique for placing the focal point within a set space, the central area here on the cover with the image, the green marker, it follows completely with the rule of thirds. So it's and everything's like obviously drawing your eye to it. Yeah, I mean, again, it's if you look carefully, I mean, the ropes behind his hand there, they're pointing to the green marker. They're pointing down to your name as well. The axe is pointing down to your name. Like everything's an arrow, just guiding the eye towards different directions. But I really feel like I made it work smartly and properly here. Like it just works. So
well, and I feel like it's like we're kind of I don't know, like we're on the same wavelength, because I know the feathers are also drawn into native, but the story really, now spoiler warning, if you guys haven't read the first book, if you want to close your ears for like 15 seconds, but the main person who was killed in the first book, the main bad guy, if you will, her name is Mot. She's an Egyptian god, and that's what popped off the God War, but her symbol is the feather. So it all kind of works together. Yeah, there's
some synergy happening here. Yeah, that's good. That's nice.
Yeah. But we'll pull this back, and we can go back to full screen here. So one thing you're also known for on Twitter, and this is another thing too, like I know a lot of people hate on Twitter and stuff, but that's, any social media can be used for bad causes. But one thing I love that you do is you really kind of push like health and fitness and mental health. Where does that come from for you?
I've always been, it's that's a great question. I was haven't thought about that in a while, but I remember when I was 15, I came to the conscious realization that I could decide exactly what went in my body, and that's when I started working out to try and transform my physique. I was always just kind of interested in, I mean, as an artist, the interest in anatomy and muscularity, and it just kind of like translated into my own reality, trying to achieve that kind of physique that I'd like to draw. At the same time, it's kind of like a study, because as my body develops, I can study. Like I use my images as reference when I'm drawing characters, just to because I'm my own living, breathing reference source. So, but being able to actually, doing art requires lots of energy. So having a solid diet, and I'm sitting at my desk a lot, so being able to get up and keep the body healthy it's vital, I find, to going as hard as I can with art. It kind of lends itself to the practice, because yeah, it's an energy thing. It's like just, and mental health, of course, having a healthy body, eating right, even just talking about these topics, I think it all helps to retain a sense of clarity and focus. It's very easy to lose focus. I maybe as an artist, I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else, but I know for myself, my mind's always, it's all over the place all the time. But when I really focus in, especially doing a piece of art, that's where I find my peace. So yeah, it's an interesting question, but it's something that's always just been a part of me, trying to stay fit, and sharing that with other people, because I know how hard it is to follow any kind of like disciplined lifestyle. But I find it kind of, yeah, it's important in practicing art. So
Yeah, and I can definitely imagine that. And this is what I tell people all the time. It's like in the US, and I don't know if this has changed, but while I was in school, Indiana was the only state that had K through 12 mandatory gym class,
oh wow,
physical education.
yeah.
And they scored the highest on all the testing. And I'm like, is there no correlation, people? It's like, if your body feels good, your mind's going to work better, and you're going to be able to achieve things at a higher level. And I can imagine, sitting and working on your art is very, like, you have to be in it, and if you're not feeling right, if your body's not feeling right, you're going to be, I notice it myself when I'm writing. Like if I've been eating a bunch of junk food for days, and I'm just like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not into it, but the better your body feels, the better your mind works. And that's how I feel.
100%, man. Clarity comes from your mind not being disrupted. Like sugar is a killer for focus. It just is. All the things we want to eat, it's an experience. It's fun. But when it comes time to doing something that requires like deep concentration, deep focus, you got to make those sacrifices. And when I fall into the art, like working on your cover, for example, that was like a good couple weeks of straight dedicated work. And some days I went without eating because I just didn't want to get disrupted. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't mind fasting here and there, but something I really don't talk about much, but sometimes I'll get into it so deeply. It's just me and the work, and there's nothing else. I don't think about anything else. And it's the only way to really push it.
Do you lose track of time when you're really?
I don't even look at the clock. I can't look at the clock, except when I have to start work in the morning. I'll take a look, but I just don't bother. It's just, I'm here. This is going to get done when it's done. I'm not rushing it. I'm just not rushing it. It's done when it's done. So,
well, and that has been my, my thought is like, I was like, I'm not gonna rush you. I try not to rush people who, it's like, especially if I've seen their work before and I'm like, I know they do good work. I was like, I'm not gonna try to micromanage or push you. Like with my editor, I kind of let her go. And then like when it comes back, it's better than I even imagined it would be, and I think if you have a person who has a good skill set and like all they need to tell me is, I'm in it, it's going to be good. I'm like, okay, I believe you. So I'm going to step back and let you do your thing.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate, like, I mean, everyone listening to this, Joseph's patience is unparalleled. He really did give me free reign with not only the content but the time. You know, a little bit of pressure is good. I have worked under pressure. That one cover I posted called for the book that with a colleague I'm working with called Viral Load, that was under a time constraint. But yeah, like the pressure can help. It just pushes the ideas out harder and faster. But when I have more time, what happens when I'll work until I fall asleep? I'll wake up and I'll be like, okay, I see it from a different set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes, and I make changes or I add to it in ways I didn't see prior. You know, I might even like one day I'll take a break, go for a walk. I'm thinking about it, problem solving. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, like the feather idea didn't come in until maybe halfway through. And then even the ornate design around the rest of it, I'm like, this needs more punch. It's got to have more detail on the border just to balance out with the center art. So it all just keeps coming together. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you know, I know I keep hyping you up, but like that border, especially like the border on the second book with the barbed wire.
Oh yeah.
Come on, that's just epic.
I'm always trying to push myself. Like to get better at art, you got to challenge yourself and go beyond what you've ever done before. I've never done something like that. And I'm like, well, why not? Why not? Just try it out. And if you can see the difference between the pencil version of it versus the final version, I honestly had no idea it was going to look the way it did when it was finalized. I was just going through the motions, drawing each barb on the wire, and then it just finally came together. And I think it turned out.
Yeah.
You saw just a couple of squiggly S lines on the pencil version. It's like, yeah, there's going to be barbed wire there, and then you see it's like, okay, there's barbed wire.
Well, because it's kind of like when you send me the pencil work, you know, and you know, you can kind of see the vague stuff. I'm like, it starts getting my imagination going. I'm like,
Right.
oh, all right. I see what he's going to go for here. This is, you know. I'm always just so excited whenever you're working on the stuff, because I'm just like, I see the stuff in my head, and then the way you put it out, and now, you know, I had always had a thing in my head where I was like, okay, what does that tomahawk really look like? Is it, you know, I was like, is it the sharper tomahawk? Is it a round, you know? And then when you first showed me that, I'm like, that's it, man. That is badass. Like, you know, and I think my readers will feel the same way when they see that cover and then they get into the book and he's doing certain things with the tomahawk. I think they're going to be like, oh, dude, that's so freaking sweet. They'll be able to see it inside the novel. And,
excellent. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And another maybe just a hobby or interest of yours that I think is really cool is, like, you seem to be very much into, you know, Viking culture and warrior culture and stuff. I see the
this bit of the sword there on the wall. Yeah,
sword
that's
in the background. I see you post. I don't know if you saw the thumbnail, but I got you on the thumbnail with the big long sword.
Nice, cool, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, well, owning a sword has always been a bucket list item for me. So last year, my buddy and I took a trip down to London, Ontario. I live in Canada. And London, Ontario has the ultimate melee weapons shop that actually all the orders out of America, the United States, come from that store. So we had to go to the source. They had all kinds of movie replica swords in there. They had Conan's Atlantean, all the Lord of the Rings weapons. They had authentic Japanese katanas in there. Battle axes, throwing knives, throwing stars, everything. You name it, it was there. They had spears, they had javelins, everything was there. So I was like, I got to pick up a sword. I held different swords, a few Viking swords. So a lot of them were single-hander swords. But this one really spoke to me. This is an authentic medieval knight's bastard sword forged from 5160 high carbon steel. And it's not sharpened yet I say, because swords are like, I don't think anyone has an idea how lethal swords actually are. Like, this thing could cut through a watermelon no problem, and it's not sharpened. So a sharpened sword is like you could just, you know, it's get the idea how brutal it can be.
Well, I mean, you know, to give a perspective, I mean, that's how they used to rate katanas, is by bodies. Yeah, they're like, oh, this is a 2-body blade. This is a 3-body blade. I'm like, okay, that's morbid, but all right.
Yeah. Oh, it's no joke though, man. I mean, it's just incredible. The the destructive power of these melee weapons of old. Yeah, but it's interesting to. I do plan on taking a FEMA course of some kind just to learn proper use of a sword, proper handling. This sword up here remains on my wall, or in some photos. Again, for reference, it's good for posing with shots to draw from.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now it's just a souvenir on the wall. But
well, and I think that's another thing that we kind of mesh well, and I think whenever you're drawing stuff, it's like I because I think we have the same kind of interests and stuff. You just have all the skill to put towards the visions and stuff. My son bought me this giant axe.
Very nice, very cool.
Yeah,
I like
it's
it.
got the battle axe on it. He's like, "Oh, Dad would love that." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, because Vikings are awesome." Yeah. So, like, what got you into Viking culture and stuff like that?
I've always been fascinated by, all the different warrior cultures, samurai, Vikings, native warriors. All of it is just so interesting to me. The weapons, I always liked watch. There was a show on television a long time ago, comparing different weapon types, and that really just kind of inspired me to learn more about how people fought back then. I think that was it.
That was a great.
And then there was another one where they actually forged their own weapons and then tested them out to compare.
Oh yeah,
so
Forged
that
Fire or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yep. But that, yeah, I don't have I might have Scandinavian roots, but my roots are Germanic and Polish. So maybe they go back even further than that. I'm sure they do. Further up north. It's just kind of always been there. I haven't really gone out of my way to push that onto my persona or anything, but it's just kind of there. So, and it shows up in my artwork. Obviously, I like drawing warrior type figures. I'll draw anything for anyone. I just seem to lean in that direction. It's just exercising that imagination in the right way.
Yeah, and I know one thing that you've been doing to kind of help. I guess it wouldn't necessarily just be for self-pub people, but I feel like indie and self-pub people, it would help the most. If you want to tell my viewers about Pitch Deck Solutions, is that what?
Oh yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, this is so my colleague and I'll give you a bit of background on my colleague. His name's Gary S. Cadet. He's been a writer for 35 years. He's published professionally over that time. He did publish for a Big Five earlier in his career. He's written for newspapers. He's been a journalist, and he's been a ghostwriter for Hollywood for 20 years. So he's written movies that we've watched.
Oh, awesome!
So he knows how to write. And recently, so I've been teaming up with him, producing artwork for his covers, and we're actually adapting one of his novels into a graphic novel. So that's something going on behind the scenes. But this business we just launched 2 weeks ago called Pitch Deck Solutions. What we do is we take your written content and we create a kind of resume for your content to be turned into a TV show or a movie. And this is the way into a studio or a manager to represent you for a studio, because they're getting unsolicited scripts, novels, manuscripts all the time. And they don't have the time to sit through and read through all these submitted works. And it's unfortunate for the writers, because buried in that pile is probably the next greatest film. But what you can do, and what is never discussed, nobody knows about this because they don't want people to know about it. And what I did recently with Gary was turn one of his scripts into a feature pitch. So a feature pitch is for movies, and a pitch deck is for TV series. And they're both very different from each other. But they have to be created in a very specific way. There is a layout kind of structure to it that a manager is going to see, and they're going to know that's the kind. So this person knows what's going on. We're going to pay more attention to them. They've submitted something we can just look at quickly. It's going to have a log line, which is like the elevator pitch, a brief synopsis, and specific visuals that count towards what you've produced. So that's going to be the feature pitch. Now, and the pitch deck for a TV series is way more elaborate. That's quite a lengthy process to put together, but that's what they want to see for making a TV show. So if they give your script an okay, It's kind of like the updated version of a Bible, like a movie Bible or a TV show Bible. In the past, it was all written text. Today, it's a written and visual combined type of resume that it's a lot more brief, but a lot more clear, and a studio can look at and be like, I like that idea. Your writing might not be the strongest, generally speaking, but if you have the idea, they can work with it. They'll see it, they'll work with it. You might be the next big hit. So that's the imperative nature of putting a pitch, feature pitch or pitch deck together. So I think a lot of people aren't clear yet on how vital it is, but actually what it is. So over the coming weeks, I'm gonna continue making videos just describing what it is we're trying to do and how we can actually like help writers, because this is the way in.
Yeah, when I first heard, I watched the whole video, so I got the full context of it. I was like, that is an amazing idea, and that's really the way you have to do it, because I've never even put my stuff out for traditional publishing because I wanted to do it all myself and have all the control. But I looked into it and I did a lot of research, and that's kind of how they do it. Like they only give you like 3 minutes. Like they scan it, and like you said, if you guys know how to formulate it, and they can look at it, they're okay, this one at least knows what they're doing. And then that will give them more time to act. They're like, okay, I'll spend a few more minutes on this one looking through. And then if you, like you said, a lot of times TV shows, it's about the idea, because you as the writer, very rarely, unless you're a Stephen King or one of these really big guys, you're not going to be the writer for the show. You're not going to be in the writer's room. So they want a good, solid idea that has a nice overarching story, and then they can fill in all the gaps.
Precisely. And they might even buy your script. There might be a buyout because I like the idea so much, and you presented it in such a clear, defined way that they can work with it. Absolutely. This, and again, writers, nobody knows what they want to see. It's just not discussed. You'll never see it anywhere on Twitter. And they do that deliberately. The studios just don't want unsolicited work. But because I've been working with Gary, and his manager actually sent him a template that we were both able to work from. Now this template could be available to anybody, but doing it the way it needs to be done is where we come in, where we specialize, because we've done it and it's worked. Gary had his novels featured, his feature pitches presented to Paramount and Miramax, and his pitch decks were sent recently, or represented through his manager at the Cannes Film Festival in Europe. So like executives actually saw his work, and that's what we can help any writer do. We can help them get seen by the right kind of people. That's exactly what it's about. So
how would people get in touch with you about about this, or about your art, if they want to have you as a cover artist or just to do character work?
Sure, yeah, appreciate that. Anybody, you can email me at drawnbybon, all lowercase letters, @gmail.com, or you can email me to my personal email at matthew.a.bon@gmail.com, all lowercase again. Of course, if you use Twitter, I welcome at any time DMs. You can personally DM me and let me know what you're interested in, if you have any projects you'd like me to help you with. And with Pitch Deck Solutions, you can DM me on Twitter, or again, you can send me an email to my personal email, or Pitch Deck Solutions, no space, all lowercase, @gmail.com. So a few different ways to contact me. And feel free to contact any of those addresses about anything I've just discussed. So.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to be pushing this for any of my self-pub people.
Thank you, sir.
I'm actually doing a live with a couple others indie authors, and I'm sure I'm going to be bringing that up, because, I mean, if you look at like Twitter or Instagram or anything, like Brandon Sanderson, now his numbers are up now. More than they were, but like if you looked at him, he's considered the biggest fantasy author in the world right now.
Okay.
But like he only has like 300,000 followers versus like Neil Gaiman has like 2 million.
Right.
The only difference between them is Brandon sells more books probably, but Neil has all these adaptations.
Right.
And that's what can take you, from being at any level to superstardom. And you see some of these shows that are, on these network, and you're like, and it says like based off of a novel, and you go and look up the novel, and it's like, they're not always picking, like you said, like they're not always picking Stephen King and Jim Butcher. Like they're looking for great ideas, and sometimes you're the diamond in the rough that they're looking for.
100%. That's exactly it. Yep. I've seen that too. Yeah, a lot of shows kind of obscure, based off obscure like graphic novels. I've noticed a lot of titles that are lesser well known. I'm familiar with a lot of them because I frequent comic shops and bookshops. But it's like, oh, they made a movie out of that or a TV show out of that. Interesting, because I wouldn't have thought. So it is possible. You just have to know the way in, and it's not so crystal clear.
So most of my viewers are like sci-fi fantasy readers. What is your either sci-fi or favorite fantasy book?
Sci-fi. I haven't read a lot of sci-fi in the last while. Actually, Michael Moorcock. I've been going back and reading a lot of his pulp fiction that he wrote in, I think it was the late 60s, early 70s. Amazing. Those books are so good because they absolutely fuel the imagination. I have some of the greatest visuals. When I'm reading his books, I can see in my mind the kind of artwork that Mobius drew. That's what it does for me. So, yeah, I can't emphasize enough about Michael Moorcock. Michael Moorcock. He does sci-fi / fantasy. It's kind of a blend of the two genres. So, definitely one of my favorites in the last while that I've read. Yeah,
that is super cool, man. Super cool. So, now we just finished up, the third book, and I have another one on the dock for you, but will it be a little while down the road? Okay. What projects are you currently working on? Do you have anything coming down the pipeline that people might be interested in?
Yeah, so I'm working with 2 other clients on their book covers. So the next book cover is the third book for a client you might have seen. She is writing it's kind of like a memoir, and her covers, they kind of evolve from the same imagery, which is interesting to put together. That'll be upcoming soon. I posted the second one a couple weeks back, and tomorrow I'm meeting with a client. We're discussing. He's cut out a sword blade, and he wants me to produce artwork that he's going to laser etch on the surface. So we're going to meet. He's going to bring me the actual blade. I'm going to take some measurements so I can produce it in actual, like the actual size that's going to be seen on the sword. So it's just going to be cool. It's going to be something cool. I haven't seen my work translated into that yet, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah, you definitely have to post that sword after he etches it on there. Yeah, that is going to be so cool to see. But I guess I can tell them here real quick again, because this was 40 some minutes ago. But yeah, and as I said before, Twitter, any social media can be bad, but like it's all about how you choose to use it. And me and Matthew just kind of happened to follow each other from the writing community and stuff, and then I asked him, I was like, well, I asked into the ether, if you will, does anybody do high quality, pencil or ink? And then, Matthew raised his hand and he's like, check me out, but yeah, I mean, you have, every so often you'll update your pinned comment, and you have, a list, or a different work that you've done. I mean, you have that really cool Dalmatian that's on there, and I think, so are all those commissioned, or are those just things that you've done yourself personally, and you just wanted to kind of get out?
I appreciate that. Yeah, that pinned tweet, that was actually a couple of years back, and I have to update it. It's going to happen soon because I've obviously got better work to post. But yeah, your cover's on there on that pin. Those are all commission pieces. That latest pin. So I'll probably continue posting the commission pieces just to showcase what a client might be able to get when they hire me as an artist. So, and if in my feed, if anyone listening here wants to check out more of my work, in the media section of my tabs, actually the highlight section, that's a new section Twitter just added, and I've you can select tweets that you want to like immortalize, like kind of archive for all time, and they'll show up in your highlights. So I've got a lot of recent sketches in my highlights and a couple videos that discuss pitch deck solutions. You get more information on that there. So yeah, I mean, just like Joseph said, Twitter, any social media platform, if it's used for the right reasons, if you're looking for artists, writers, editors, it's the place to go. A lot of hungry people out there looking to share their talent, share their work, help other people. It's not all bad. There's a lot of bad, but it's not all bad. You just gotta go fishing.
Yep. You gotta, and I tell people all the time, if you find somebody who does great work, stick with them, and I don't know if you'll have to go back towards the 25-minute mark to see the new cover, and I'll post it up later for anybody who's watching this now. But yes, it just gets better, so I can't wait to show it off to everybody. I can't wait to get it in physical form. And I can't wait to work on the next project too. Like your skill level is going all, I can see you exponentially it just gets way better. It's not like just a little, you can tell you really want to be great. And this is what I tell everybody. I try to encourage people. It's like, you can, there are no limits, you just have to want it, and then you just have to work at it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, that's it. Always trying to outdo yourself. It's a competition with yourself.
Yep.
It's same with writing, with art, with music, any art practice. It's just, you're your own competition. And I can see what I've done. It's like, I look back on old work and I'm like, well, what was I thinking? Or why wasn't I thinking about that? And now it's, just the clarity is just kind of like refreshing, because it knows it's a marker of progress. So.
Yes. So thank you, Matthew, for coming on here. Hopefully more people get to see your work, and and also I am really excited to see where your pitch deck solutions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Hopefully that's and maybe we can work together too for that.
Certainly.
And anybody who's interested in looking at your work, you can go to Twitter, go to drawmybond.com, and you can see some. And not all your work is black and white. You actually do have some colored stuff in there.
Some colored pieces, yeah.
Yeah, and it is you got that, like, the trippy berserk stuff going on. So so I'm really interested in that. So everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, the people who are going to watch on the replay. I know a lot of you are still asleep right now, but on the West Coast, thank you all for coming in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.